In the pulsing heart of downtown Chicago, a man named Elijah Brooks stepped off the city bus wearing the only new shirt he'd bought in years, a pale blue button-down with stiff sleeves and a stubborn crease down the front. He adjusted the collar with care, took a steadying breath, and walked head-on into the rush of morning foot traffic. People moved fast here, like the ground would open beneath them if they paused even a second. Horns blared, cell phones chirped, crosswalks filled and emptied like clockwork. Elijah moved with purpose, but the nerves twisted tight beneath his ribs. He wasn't from here. Not really. Just 2 weeks ago, he'd been hauling boxes into a rundown storage unit in a town that barely registered on state maps. The move north had been a leap, one part desperation, one part fragile hope. At 34, Elijah had carried drywall, scrubbed floors, stacked pallets, and weathered every kind of low-paying job a man could find without a degree. He had scars on his hands and muscles built from years of lifting what others wouldn't. Life hadn't offered him shortcuts or sympathy. But he had a reason to push forward, his mother, Laverne, whose health was declining faster than her Medicaid would allow. Her prescriptions had become a game of roulette, the heating bill a monthly gamble. That's why today mattered. This interview was more than a job, it was a crack in the wall, a chance to push through. The construction site on Madison and Oak Ridge was hiring dozens for a massive new development. Elijah had memorized the name of the foreman, the directions, and even a few industry terms he'd heard in break rooms over the years. He wasn't polished. He wasn't certified. But he was ready. He weaved through the crowd, eyes on the skyscraper cranes looming above the construction zone just up the street. They looked like mechanical giants, frozen mid-step. His heart pounded, not from the walk, but from the stakes. No fallback plan. No safety net. Just this one shot. But as he crossed the street, a movement pulled at the corner of his vision, something that didn't belong in the flow of commuter chaos. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. She stood alone just beyond the sidewalk, her puffy pink coat zipped to her chin, her pigtails crooked and windblown. Her sneakers were scuffed, her jeans torn at the knee. But what struck Elijah was her stillness. While the city moved around her like a river around a stone, she didn't budge. Just stood, scanning the crowd with wide, anxious eyes. No adult nearby. No hand to hold. Just her. Elijah slowed. He had a place to be. But something about her expressiona, a kind of quiet panic, stopped him cold. He hesitated, scanned for a parent, a guardian, anyone who might rush up and explain it all away. No one came. Then, from down the street, a flatbed truck rumbled through the intersection, stacked too high with lumber and metal beams. Elijah turned just as one of the beams, loosely tied, slipped sideways. In a heartbeat, the laws of gravity took over. The beam tilted, then began to fall fast, deadly, and directly toward where the little girl stood. There wasn't time to shout. No time to think. Elijah didn't hesitate. He sprinted, heart in his throat, cutting across traffic. Horns blared. Tires screeched. But his focus was locked. He lunged, scooping the girl into his arms and diving backward onto the sidewalk just as the beam slammed into the concrete behind them. Dust exploded into the air. Shouts erupted from the site. Elijah's sleeve tore as he hit the ground and pain seared through his arm, but the girl, she was okay. Trembling, stunned, but okay. He crouched beside her, still shielding her with his body. "You're all right," he said softly. "I've got you." She didn't answer. Just clung to him, her small hands gripping the front of his shirt like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. People passed them, curious but indifferent, the way cities sometimes are. Elijah held his ground, checking her limbs for injuries. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked gently. "Madeline," she whispered. "Madeline," he repeated with a nod. "You hurt anywhere?" She shook her head, but her lip quivered. He glanced again at the site gates, his opportunity, the interview, the reason he came to this city. But it was already slipping. He was late, covered in dust, shirt ripped. No clean way to salvage this morning. But Madeline was still holding his hand. And he couldn't walk away. "Do you know where your parents are?" he asked. She hesitated, then pointed toward the site. "My dad works there," she said. "He told me to wait in the car. But I got scared. I was looking for him." Elijah's stomach dropped. She had wandered away alone, unguarded, nearly killed. "What's he wearing?" he asked. "A yellow jacket," she replied. That was something. Elijah stood, scanning the site for a man in yellow. He crossed to the fence, approached the security booth. The guard scowled. "You got business here?" "I had an interview," Elijah said. "But this little girl Madeline says her father works here." "Yellow Jacket? She's your daughter?" "No. He paused. I pulled her out of the way. That beam it nearly hit her." The guard narrowed his eyes. But before he could speak, Madeline stepped forward and pressed her hands to the fence. "Please," she said. "I need my daddy." The guard's face shifted. He picked up a radio. "Stand by." Elijah waited tense. Then, through the maze of scaffolding and cranes, a figure appeared running full tilt. A tall man in a neon yellow jacket, hard hat in one hand, panic in every step. "Madeline," he shouted. She broke into a sprint, legs pumping, sobs bursting free as she ran straight into his arms. Elijah watched them collide. The man her father dropped to his knees, clutching her like he'd never let go again. He checked her face, her arms, her knees. She clung to him like an anchor in a storm. Then the man looked up. Their eyes met. "You the one who saved her?" he asked, his voice cracked and raw. Elijah nodded once. The man stood slowly, shifting Madeline to one hip. "I'm Jacob Stanton, site supervisor." "Elijah Brooks," he replied. Jacob stepped forward and shook Elijah's hand. "Thank you," he said, the words heavy. "You saved her life." "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Jacob said. "You didn't. Most people wouldn't." He glanced down at Elijah's ruined sleeve, the dust still clinging to his clothes. "You had an interview?" "I did." "You missed it," Jacob said. Elijah didn't argue. "You're hired," Jacob said. Elijah blinked. "What?" "I don't need a resume to know the kind of man I want on my team." Jacob called over the foreman. In minutes, Elijah had a badge, a start time, and a packet of new hire paperwork. The next morning, Elijah showed up at 5:45. First in line. He worked with silent precision, lifting more than his share, listening more than he spoke. Word spread quickly. The new guy? He saved the boss's kid. But that wasn't what earned him respect. It was his ethic. He never slacked, never complained, showed up early, stayed late. Weeks passed. Then months. Jacob watched, quietly at first, then with increasing trust. One afternoon, Elijah was called into the trailer. A new badge awaited him, crew lead. He stared at it. "You sure?" Jacob smiled. "You've already proven it." Elijah sent money home every week. Eventually, he saved enough to move his mother into a quiet apartment near Washington Park. When she stepped off the bus, Elijah hugged her tight. She smelled like home. Lavender lotion and old hymn books. "You did it," she whispered. "I knew you would." That night, as Elijah stood by the window in his new place, the lights of the city glowing below, he thought of the little girl in the pink coat, the falling beam, the torn shirt, and how one moment of doing the right thing had changed everything. He wasn't chasing hope anymore. He had found it.